If your bank account had a personality, it would probably be the quiet one at the back of the room who occasionally clears its throat to remind you it still exists. You make decent money. So why does it still feel like your salary arrives with a return ticket already booked? Why does every pay rise feel less like progress and more like a slightly more expensive version of the same cycle? And why is the most frustrating part not the spending itself, but the fact that from the outside, you look like someone who is doing fine? Marcus is 31. He earns $78,000 a year, which in most rooms is the kind of number that makes people nod politely and assume you have your life together. Marcus drives a financed car. Marcus wears a gold chain that catches the light at exactly the right angle in his profile pictures. Marcus posts holiday photos from places that look expensive, and he looks expensive in them, and that is the whole point. From the outside, Marcus looks rich. From the inside, Marcus has $1,200 in savings, $4,800 on a credit card he is managing quietly, and the persistent feeling that one bad month would end the entire performance. Marcus is not broke in the obvious way, which almost makes it more frustrating. He is just stationary. His income keeps moving and his net worth keeps standing still, and the gap between how he looks and how he actually is has become the central organizing project of his financial life. Dan knows this pattern well. He lived a version of it himself for years. The hoodie, the chain, the upgrades that felt earned but were never actually paid for. But Marcus is not Dan, and that is what makes this worth watching. Because what Marcus is about to discover is something most people never figure out until it is far too late to undo. Looking rich and being rich are not the same thing. They are opposite strategies, and the math is about to prove it. Here is the first thing to understand. Looking rich is a spending strategy. Being rich is a keeping strategy. They use the same income, the same salary, the same starting line, and they produce completely different destinations. Marcus does not know this yet, because Marcus has spent his entire adult life using the same strategy for both goals. He assumed that looking the part was the same as being the part, and that somewhere along the way, the looking would magically turn into the being. It does not. Looking rich requires spending money you have not kept. Being rich requires keeping money you do not spend. Same income, opposite direction. And the difference is not subtle. Let us look at the math. Marcus earns $78,000 a year. After tax, his take-home is roughly $5,200 a month. That is the number that actually runs his life because that is the number that actually lands in his account. Now, Marcus does not think of himself as a big spender. He does not buy boats. He does not gamble. He does not do anything that would show up on a list of obvious financial mistakes. He just does what most people do. He upgraded his car when he got the pay rise because he had been wanting a nicer car for 2 years, and now he could finally afford the monthly payment. He moved into an apartment that cost $300 more a month than his last one, because he deserved a place that felt like the kind of place someone earning his salary should live in. He started going to dinners that cost $90 a head instead of $50, because the people around him were doing the same, and fitting in cost what it costs. He kept the gold chain, the weekend trips, the subscription stack, the gym membership he uses twice a month, the phone plan that includes the new phone, and the quiet assumption that all of this is just what normal life costs at his income. None of these decisions are reckless on their own. That is what makes them so dangerous, because Marcus is not failing because he is irresponsible. He is failing because each individual choice makes complete sense inside the story he is telling himself. And the story he is telling himself is the same story most people tell themselves. The story is, I earn this much, therefore I should live like someone who earns this much. That sentence feels rational. It is actually a trap. Behavioral economists call it lifestyle creep. But that phrase is too gentle for what it actually does. Lifestyle creep is not just spending more when you earn more. It is the quiet, automatic process by which your baseline cost of living rises to meet your income before you ever consciously decide to let it. It does not feel like a decision because it does not happen as a decision. It happens as a series of small upgrades that each feel reasonable justified, and barely noticeable individually. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly better car, a slightly more expensive weekend. And then one day you look up and your entire income is spoken for, your savings have not moved, and the only thing that has actually grown is the cost of being you. That is what happened to Marcus. And it is what happens to almost everyone who earns more and somehow ends up in the same place. But here is where the math gets uncomfortable. Because the cost of looking rich is not just the money you spent. The cost is everything that money would have become if you had kept it instead. Let us run the numbers. Marcus upgraded his car. The new payment is $480 a month. His old payment was $290. The difference is $190 a month. That $190 is not $190. If Marcus had invested that $190 a month into a broad market index fund, instead of putting it into a slightly nicer car, and left it alone for 30 years at a historically average annual return of roughly 10%, that $190 a month would have grown to approximately $430,000. Marcus did not spend $190 a month on a car. He spent $430,000 from his future self to drive a car that looks slightly more successful to people who are not paying attention. Now add the apartment, $300 a month more than he needed to spend. Invested instead over 30 years, that $300 a month becomes roughly $680,000. Now add the dinners. Say he spends $160 a month more than he used to on socializing. That is another $360,000 over 30 years. The gold chain, the trips, the upgrades, the subscription stack, the new phone, the gym he does not use. Add them all up and you are not looking at a few $100s a month of lifestyle creep. You are looking at well over $1 million of future wealth that was quietly converted into a present-day image. Marcus does not know this yet. Marcus thinks the cost of his lifestyle is roughly what it costs him this month. The actual cost is what it would have become over the decades he will need it. That is the blind spot that wrecks more people than any market crash ever will. And here is the cruelest part. Marcus is not even spending this money to feel rich. He is spending it to look like he is not falling behind. Because Marcus does not see other people's savings. He sees their cars, their holidays, their dinners, their chains. He sees the visible evidence of other people's spending, and he assumes that if they are spending like that, they must be ahead of him. So he spends to keep up, not realizing that the people he is trying to keep up with are often doing exactly the same thing. Spending to look like they are not falling behind people who are also spending to look like they are not falling behind. It is a room full of people performing wealth to an audience that is also performing wealth, and almost nobody in the room is actually building any. That is not a moral failure. That is a visibility problem. We see spending. We do not see savings. So we calibrate our sense of where we should be financially based on the most visible people around us. And the most visible people around us are almost always the ones spending the most because spending is what is visible. The people quietly building wealth are invisible by design. They drive the older car. They live in the cheaper apartment. They post fewer holidays. They do not look rich because they are too busy becoming rich to spend money performing it. Marcus does not see them, so Marcus assumes he is behind. And the spending continues. Dan understands this better than most because Dan spent years being Marcus. The hoodie, the chain, the upgrades, the quiet math that never added up. Dan was not less intelligent than the people who were building wealth around him. He was just spending his money on the wrong performance. And the moment he finally understood the difference between looking rich and being rich, everything shifted. Not because he found a genius strategy, because he finally stopped spending money to prove he had money. That is the system shift. It is not about earning more. It is not about extreme frugality. It is about recognizing that every dollar you spend on looking rich is a dollar that cannot become being rich, and that the cost of the looking is almost never the sticker price. It is the decades of growth that dollar would have produced if you had let it work instead. Marcus does not need to earn more. Marcus needs to keep more. And the way he keeps more is not by white-knuckling through every temptation with a superior willpower. It is by building a system that removes the decision from the heated moment. He separates his money by job. One account for spending, one account for the emergency fund, boring and safe. One account for investing, deliberately annoying to access, a few days away.